Hi there. In the last video, I explored the whole experience of procrastination from the perspective of the stories we tell ourselves to justify this irrational delay. And I had a look at why that's not really good for us, it's not very sustainable, and it can have an impact on our well-being, our productivity, and our relationships with those around us. In this video, what I'd like to do is explore some more of the things that you can do to minimize the chance of your procrastination. I'm Dr. Richard McKinnon. I'm a chartered psychologist and coach, and on this channel, I like to share insights from the science of psychology to help you be your best self at work. In this video, I want to give you a simple multi-step process that you can use to minimize the chance of procrastination, derailing your day or week, and allowing you to really sidestep those stories and focus on what really matters to you at work. But isn't it interesting? We don't procrastinate about everything in life. So starting by looking at what it is you're actually procrastinating about can give you a real insight into what it is you're trying to avoid. Let's start with a quick reminder. Procrastination is the irrational delay to taking action that has some meaningful consequences. So not rescheduling or not deciding not to do something at all because it doesn't make sense anymore, but we're delaying something that really does need to be done. And we're setting ourselves up for problems further down the line. Because remember, procrastination is a coping strategy, but it's rooted in avoidance, and that rarely serves us well. Let's first take a psychological perspective. You would expect that from me, right? So when we look at procrastination, it's important to consider the impact our thoughts and emotions are having on our decision-making and our behavior. Remember, don't view your procrastination as a laziness or some kind of failing on your part. You're merely noticing and responding to discomfort, either in your environment or anticipated discomfort in the future, and you're trying to do something about that, but you're avoiding it. And the problem with this is that sometimes the discomfort, let's say it's boredom or uncertainty or just a sense that you shouldn't be doing this task in the first place, well, sometimes that is inherent to the task. It's never going to go away. So no matter when we pick this task up in the future, it will still have the inherent the ick factor that we really don't want to experience. We're also trying to avoid something that doesn't necessarily need to be avoided at all. No one likes to experience these things, but at the same time, boredom isn't harmful. It's not painful. It doesn't damage us in any way. It's just a transient experience, short term, that we don't enjoy. If we keep trying to avoid these experiences, this psychological discomfort, we're setting ourselves up for avoiding lots of situations that we can learn from, and our life will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So the checklist I want to share with you, this 3-step process, is really, really simple. And actually, I use it in lots of different ways with my clients. Not always about procrastination, but I think it's a really good fit for this. Pause, notice, choose. What do we mean by that? Well, we start with pause. And I can probably tell what you're going to say. You're going to say, wait, you've been talking about taking action and not delaying. Why are you saying I should pause? There's a good reason for it. A lot of the problems we cause ourselves are because of the instant, automatic reaction we have to thoughts and feelings. We experience or anticipate experiencing something we don't like, and so we automatically move in the opposite direction. By inserting a pause, we're kind of short-circuiting that. We're decoupling the stimulus and the response, and we're giving ourselves some room to breathe. So the first step is to just pause and not do anything for a moment. Secondly, notice. What do I mean by notice? Now, some people use the word observe or become aware of, but we're noticing the experience of the discomfort. We're noticing the story our mind is telling us, and we're noticing, well, what is this discomfort? What name could I give this? By naming it, we're taking a step back and we're objectifying it. It's a thing we're experiencing, it's not us. When we're noticing and we're labeling this experience, and we're seeing it as discomfort and not an instruction or a demand or some kind of ultimatum, we can then see what it's trying to tell us. We don't have to do what it's telling us, but we can see, is there a message in here that could be helpful? Maybe the discomfort you're experiencing is telling you that you're not quite clear where to start. And so you could get clarity on that, asking a colleague, asking your manager. Maybe you've got doubts as to whether you are the right person to do this. And maybe a conversation with someone else could help you understand why it is it's on your task list this week. Maybe the discomfort stems in part from feeling there's just too much to do. And you can take a step back and look at the priorities you've assigned yourself and what it is that you're trying to get done and whether that's even realistic. Notice that in each of these examples, it's not doing what the discomfort demands. It's listening for a message and then deciding, is there something helpful I could do? And when we're noticing what this is telling us, we need to clarify what the goal is. Why are you doing the thing that is so uncomfortable? That is something you would, if you could, push into space and never do. What is the goal here? Being really clear on where you're trying to get to can remind you of the importance of the task or its impact or why it's just up to you. And then values. Which of your personal qualities could you bring to life while doing this? Say it's the last thing you want to do. Say it's the most tedious task at work you could imagine doing. But it's necessary, so how could you be your best self while doing it? Could you bring your persistence? Could you bring your patience? Could you bring professionalism to life in doing it? So we've paused, we've noticed, and now we're going to choose. What are we choosing? We're choosing from the options in front of us. Keeping it nice and simple, we can ask ourselves, does this choice move me towards getting this done? And towards is a great word because it's about the direction of travel, not getting the whole thing done. And that's the case. It might be several small steps will get us to finishing this task. But does the next thing you're planning on doing move you towards that? Or are you considering options? Their only contribution is to move you away from some psychological discomfort. That's it. They are the options. That's the filter you can look through. I'm planning on doing it tomorrow. Does that move me towards it? Not necessarily. And actually what I'm doing is trying to avoid some boredom. So you've paused, you've noticed what the internal experience is, all this stuff that's going on inside, and you've chosen a next step that's going to move you towards actually getting this done. Let's close by having a look at a practical perspective. Some of the behavioral stuff that we can do, again, to minimize the chance of procrastination. First of all, when you're feeling a bit stuck, a bit overwhelmed, and you're really tempted to push this thing away, ask yourself, are you working on a task? Something that can be done, one and done, make a phone call, send an email, ask a question. Or are you looking at a project, a whole bunch of tasks together? And if you're looking at a list of projects, well, there's no doubt that's going to feel overwhelming. So make sure when you're looking at your list of things you want to do, that you're looking at a list of actionable, completable tasks. Our calendar is where we make commitments to ourselves and others. So if something really needs to be done, I'm going to suggest there's two things that need to be in that calendar. One is the ultimate deadline for when this important thing needs to be done. But that could leave us waiting till the last minute. So the other thing we need to do is put in some dedicated time to make sure we do that. The way we use our calendars is really, really important because they are a visual representation of how we're going to invest our time. And procrastination is all about playing with time and hoping that the future will be different. So making a commitment to do this thing well in advance of that deadline reminds us every time we look at the calendar, this is the commitment I've made to myself. Talk it through. Talk with a trusted colleague and explain your rationale for delaying it. I'm going to wait till Friday evening before gathering all this paperwork for my annual tax return because it's really boring. What do you think? There's a good chance if they are a trusted colleague who has your interests at heart, they'll point out that that is not helping you. Now that's an extreme example, but if you verbalize these stories, you can hear them in a different way. One of the other techniques that I've found works really, really well for this, and a lot of my coachees will now do it regularly when they notice the temptation to procrastinate, and that's to work in sprints. to sit down, to focus on this one thing that needs doing and only work on this for a predetermined amount of time. But if this reminds you of the Pomodoro technique, well, no surprise, this is exactly what it is. Setting a timer for, let's say, 25 minutes and then just focusing on the one task. When the timer goes ping, you take a short break and get away from the task, come back, reset the timer, and keep working on it. This removes a lot of the pressure around time because the timer is making the decision for us. It removes all of the what should I do, what could I do. We're just doing this one thing. So the bottom line here is that it's helpful to pay attention to both the psychological perspective and the practical perspective when we're trying to beat this habit. And I've used that word a lot, haven't I? Habit, because that's what it is. And like all habits, we can extinguish that. We can replace it with something much more helpful. Proactivity. Now, if you found this useful, I'd love to hear from you. If you've got questions, please put them below. And if you've enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think could work on their procrastination habit. If you've liked it, please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It always makes a big difference to the channel when we see that number going up. Thanks for taking the time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.